Hello, Ms. Opal Singleton. I'm the president and CEO of Million Kids. I hope that you follow us on our site, on our Facebook, and all of our social media. So this is a Million Kids Insider Alert. This is one of the things that where we'll get a case that we think we should analyze so that we can get insights on what we can do different in the future. I also want to encourage you to follow us at Million Kids Supporters on a private Facebook page. Go to Facebook, look for Million Kids Supporters. You do not have to be part of it, but that is a smaller group, about 250 people that we do private training with on particular cases. So this is a very difficult case to analyze, and it's maybe one that's very difficult to listen to. If you're having a bad day, you may not want to do that, but there is a lot to learn in this case. I want to thank WFLA for reporting this and giving the facts. And so I want to take a look at this. This is a young girl. She started 15 and turned 16 in the course of this. She's living with an aunt. Life is quite unstable. She was groomed by a man who was hired by the aunt to clean the pool, and the grooming process actually took place over several months. At the end there, she was taken to the woods and raped. That is what we call being broken, having your spirit broken and being excessively violated in a horrible way. Well, once that happened, the victim ran away from home in November after she got in a fight with her aunt. So it's 2 o'clock in the morning. She's on the street. She thinks she's going to go stay with the pool cleaner because he's groomed. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, she encounters Mark Poor. He's 6 years old. He's also a convicted sexual predator. Well, they have sex. He pays her $40. He buys her breakfast. As she continued walking towards the home of the pool cleaner, Steve Graham, she met another man named John Malley, who's 57 years old. Malley invited him to his home where they had sex, and she left there about 7 a.m. in the morning. So, well, he took her to the Walmart first. He bought her some clothing, some makeup, and took him back to the house. But they were at the house after having sex, he said, I have a young son that lives here. You can't stay here all day. I don't want him to see you here. So he asked her to leave. Well, she then goes on thinking she's going to go to the home of the pool cleaner. And she ultimately met up with the pool cleaner, and they had a sexual encounter at an abandoned Golden Corral. That is a restaurant. At that time, the girl hooked up with a Deontay Poole. He's 37 years old. She met him at a 7-Eleven. Now, he apparently is into drug dealing because he gave her drugs and he brought her along as he sold other drugs. In the end, they ended up at the Roadway Inn where the teenager was left alone. He went off, abandoned her after having sex. She went out around the motel, walking around in the middle of the night. She met Brandon Dunn and Alan Sheo. They got her drunk, basically, and had sex with her. Later, met a third man at that hotel, a seventh person named Timothy Cohen. So she had sex with literally 7 men in the first 24 hours of leaving home. Cohen allegedly told her that if anybody asks, tell them you're 20. Knows she's a minor. There's nothing that can be disputed of that, I think. Anyway, Colin had a friend named Candace Techdogan. Candace works at a strip club. She's 41 years old. And so Colin introduced her to Candace, and they became friends. And Candace engaged in filming them in a sex act, and the victim in a sex act at his Spring Hill home. Then Mannigan allegedly had sex with a girl in a VIP area of one of the businesses, sex from her at Techdogan's home. So you're starting to get the idea that this Candace Techdogan is setting up these encounters at her home. Jeremy Francis allegedly had sex with her at the home, the same home, after meeting her at an adult establishment. Candace works at a strip club. Pierre Williams is 30 years old. He also had sex with her at a party at her home. So as this was taking place, the girl met a man by the name of Jeremy Nansky at a bar. Now, she's way too young to be hanging out at a bar, but her friend strip club, so we start to get the picture here. She heard him say that he was a record producer, and she says, "Hey, I want to be a singer," and exchange contact information. Nanos then took the teenager to his home and engaged in sexual activity with her. Now we're back to the female, Candace. The next day, someone came up to Candace while she was working as an exotic dancer at this bar and showed her a sheriff flyer, a missing person of this young girl. I want to take a minute and applaud that sheriff for taking the time to create those flyers and getting them out to people. That is really Million Kids does Million Kids Missing Kids. We put out flyers for parents of missing and runaway teenagers. And it can be that simple flyer that can make the difference. In this case, all of a sudden, Candace realized, as if she didn't, but she realized the sheriff was involved and the girl is underage. Candace Graham to get that girl out of her house, and he took her down to some other motel and left her on a hotel room. Candace then did call the sheriff's office to report the girl's location. Taken into protective custody after deputies found that she was highly intoxicated, so they had been feeding her quite a bit of alcohol. I want to commend the sheriff for understanding. Law enforcement sometimes gets a bad rap on these trafficking cases, but not this sheriff. He really got it. He said these are Cyber was surrounded by many adults during the time that she was missing. All of them failed to look out for her safety and her well-being and advantage of her for their own pleasure. The survivor told the suspect's age, but that didn't matter to these people. Instead, they saw this person as something to use regardless of her age. They took her to many locations for the horrific acts, from adult establishments to their homes and homes of their. The survivor said that she did these things because she needed food or shelter. She wasn't treated as a child or even a human being, quite frankly, during this time. Most of the participants will rationalize that the sex was consensual and think that nobody got hurt. There is little or no acknowledgement the victim is a minor. I want you to see the charges involved here, because one of the things I want you to understand is I'd be willing to bet you that none of these offenders see themselves as sex trafficking or acting as a pimp, which some of them did, by the way. And so some of them are being charged with human trafficking, as you can see. And lewd and lascivious battery for Stephen Graham. I'm sure that's related to the rape that she suffered at his hands. But I want you to look at the charges of Candace here, because she filmed it and apparently was sharing that. Charged for possession of child pornography, which can carry some very heavy sentences, and use of a child in sexual performances. So as you get these charges, one of the things I want you to think about is what we can learn from this case. One of the things I learned early on, and makes it so hard to understand child sex trafficking cases, is that about 60% of kids involved in sex trafficking are either from the foster care, homeless, or boy kids, or pregnant kids that have incredible needs for support and safety. There's always a tendency to blame the victim, but it must be understood that the victim is a minor. That victim was groomed for sex long before she ever left home. She was raped by him, meaning that he broke her and made her feel as if she had no power to stop others from violating her. This victim is in a very unstable living situation where she's totally dependent on others to take care of her and provide her with food and shelter. The underage victim was performed, as it suggests, at a strip club, which of course is totally illegal. Most of these participants would not think of themselves as engaging in sex trafficking, but rather having consensual sex. Most people think that the victim of human trafficking needs to be a pimp involved. However, Graham, the pool guy, Poor, Colin, Sky, they all arrange sexual encounters for the minor, which is why they're being charged with human trafficking. And Candace acted as a bottom. She arranged sexual encounters. She took photos of them, and she brought in who paid to have sex with her. It's interesting to note that she did see the sheriff flyer, that she removed the minor very quickly, and then was willing to call the sheriff and let him know where she was at. So she's not totally cold-hearted in this, but she is the one person that is charged with child pornography. And that is because of that filming and posting of those films will get you a very high sentence. Risk factors, important takeaways on these cases. When a 16-year-old girl is run away, she's extremely vulnerable. This young lady was given drugs and alcohol, and it made it very difficult for her to make rational decisions. The victim had been previously raped, breaking down her self-esteem and ability to stand against abuse. That breaking process is what keeps these young girls bound. They feel like they have no ability to stand against these guys. I want to point out one more thing that occurred to me while I was sharing with you, and that is she stayed up all hours of the day and night, so she's very sleep deprived as this is happening. She is a homeless and runaway child. They are the most likely. The victim needs an entire support team to surround her and help stabilize. She will most likely need, for sure, stable living conditions, someplace where she's safe and she has regular food and regular shelter and regular sleep. Trauma-informed therapy, no doubt about it. She's endured a lot. She needs to have ultimately a life progression plan. Does she need to return to her education? How can she begin to prepare for a world where she has a future? She most obviously will need some legal support, and I know that she will need a medical examination and medical support and drug alcohol addiction counseling. So I want to take this time to commend the sheriff of Pasco County. He understood that it's a case of sex trafficking, and though that the victim was a willing participant, he understands that this is a minor sex trafficking, and that is how traffickers work. That will enable them to be able to go on with a good prosecution and tried as it should be tried, and get the young girl out of the light and get her a chance for a healthy and stable future. This has been a Mkia Kids Insider Alert. If you know somebody who's being violated, whether it's online or in person, you can report even anonymously at 888-3737-888. This is how you contact me, Opal Silton, opal@mkiandkids.org. I thank each and every one of you that donate and support our work. We'll see you next time on Mkia Kids Insider Alert.